Welcome to the Be Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Thanks for joining me today for the Be Bold podcast. As you may know, I've been away in India for the past couple of weeks. And while I was away, the Me Too movement took over social media and is predicted to become the start of social change in this country. News reports are coming out pretty much daily about women and men coming forward and naming high-profile sexual predators or deviants, or just describing how they've been the recipient of obnoxious behavior by men. Now, not all guys are bad, but I feel fairly confident in saying that every female has been on the receiving end of some level of sexual harassment. This is an unprecedented time in our history where women are standing up for themselves, and it is just amazing. And while I believe it's born out of a despicable leadership at the highest level, I couldn't be happier to see this movement take shape, and so happy to see that women are feeling more empowered than ever. If you listened to my welcome message on my very first episode, you know that this podcast was created because I'm a huge podcast fan, but I became increasingly dismayed by the fact that so few women are guests, at least on the ones that I listen to. And rather than whine about it, I decided to do something about it. And now I feel even stronger that women's voices need to be heard, and I'm really happy to be delivering that to you. It's in these conversations that you'll hear from women doing bold things. Take a moment to review previous episodes, and you're going to find strong women who have overcome adversity. They've started businesses, they've become change makers in their communities, they've traveled the world, attained status as world-class athletes, they've given up secure jobs to pursue their dreams and passions, and really, above all, they're making a huge difference to those who are lucky enough to come in contact with them. I personally find inspiration in every conversation and feel very fortunate to be on the other end of a microphone with these women. They inspire me, they motivate me, and make me think about my own path to success and happiness. I hope you'll support this podcast and women in general by sharing this and other episodes with friends and family. And that might be as simple as sharing an episode through social media. We are on the precipice of change, and I hope you'll join me and the women in these episodes on this journey. With that, let me tell you about today's conversation. This is with Meg Noble Peterson. I first met Meg about 10 years ago. She was introduced to me by a mutual friend, and this is when Meg still lived in New Jersey, and I happened to be their visiting family. And amazingly, she now lives relatively close to me here in the Pacific Northwest. Meg is the author of Madam, Have You Ever Really Been Happy?, which chronicles her travels through Africa and Asia. Now, Meg is let's just say one of a kind. She's the first to admit that she's a bit ADHD. As a matter of fact, that might have been the first thing she said when she came to my house to record this. But I already knew that about her, so I wasn't surprised that our conversation might bounce around a bit. Still, I loved chatting with Meg. Meg's 89, and she's been traveling for nearly 70 years. Meg first left the U.S. in 1949. 1949. At that time, her parents paid $600 for her to go to Europe to volunteer in the cleanup efforts after World War II. It's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. I can only imagine how enthusiastic she was at that time, because still today she loves travel, she loves flying, she talks about seeing the clouds from her airplane window, and she loves making connections with people from other countries. Now that she's older, she admits to being a bit slower, but it's obvious that she's still as delighted by it all and still loves connecting with cultures, and that's what brought her to Europe on that first trip. She reminds me a lot of Rita Golden Gelman in that way, and I spoke to Rita on episode 21, so you might want to check that out. Even after a hip replacement at 85, Meg left for Nepal just 4 months later, and when we recorded this, she had just returned from Mongolia. Now, that is an inspiration. With that, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Meg Noble Peterson.
years after the Second World War, going over there and working with the Quakers, cleaning up Germany. I mean, that is what got me wanting to, and having 5 or 10 different ethnic groups all helping at the same time. That is what made me say, hey, we got to make this world better. We don't want to have any more wars. Well, obviously, I haven't done too well on that score. But I was extremely upset after the war because I was 15 or 16 when it ended. I was 13 when it started. Short war, wasn't it, compared to these days? Mm-hmm. And that really is what influenced me. And then that gave me a worldview. And then I continued in the work I did with my husband. But that's a whole long story. And the work I did with my international organization, traveling because my kids were.
Well, let's start with that first trip. What year was that when you first went?
Well, my first trip was 1949.
Right. Well, let's talk about that. And how did that trip come about? And were you married at the time?
No. I was just in college.
You were in college?
I was in college. I was 19.
How did the opportunity come up that you would go do that?
Just because I wanted to do something to help after the war. And I listened to all sorts of people who had tours. And it made me, I shouldn't say this, tours, it made me upset that all they were doing was going over and gawking and looking at this war-torn world. I mean, it was like the World Trade Center all over Germany. It was unbelievable. And this was 4 years after the war. So, about 3 years after the war. And so I had some friends who were in the Quaker International Voluntary Service. And they said, you ought to try this. And so I think it was $600 my parents paid. That was a lot of money in 1949. And I went over and I went to 3 countries. I was always digging ditches. I did ditch work and roads in France, and then I went to Denmark. But the most time I spent in Germany doing what we call Backsteinklopfen, which is cleaning bricks, doing jobs that the German people couldn't do. In other words, that we weren't taking jobs from them, and cleaning bricks morning, noon, and night in a hospital which was a total rubble. I mean, we really flattened Germany.
Had you traveled before that?
I traveled only no.
You hadn't traveled, but
I hadn't traveled overseas. No.
So you wanted to take a trip, and you wanted to help rebuild.
I wanted to make an impact and then I got to go to England and stay at the London County Council hostel and meet people and listen to their stories of the war.
That was on the same
next
trip?
day, yes, and then the next year we got married in 50 and 51. We were over there. Glenn and I. We were backpacking through Europe, going to places where he'd been in the Second World War. He was a veteran, and met the Dutch underground people and stayed in Holland. And I was hooked. I mean, and then it ended up that 2 of my daughters lived in Holland. One lived in Munich, and there's only 2 daughters, 3 sons, but 2 daughters. And Martha lived in Munich and lived in Florence, and I would visit them as a music educator with my group. Music education for the handicapped, so it was perfect. I got to see them, I got to see the country, and I got to see Europe after the war, but before it got to be so Americanized.
So it was between like after the war, but during the rebuilding.
Well, I was there during I was there for a short period of time. It was only 3 years. Then I started having children. And you have to fast forward, obviously.
No, wait, hold on. Meg, there's a lot of information here, so I'm going to keep interrupting.
Yes, that's all right.
So I'm going to apologize to you right now because
I go on too long.
No, it's not that. It's just that I want to
focus.
I want to understand because so from the time that you went during that first trip and you came back, you got married.
And I was going to have, and I'll tell you off the record that our plan was to go over there.
We're on the record, by the way, so we're recording.
I didn't realize that.
That's okay. I want to hear these stories.
No. Well, we were backpacking, my husband and I, on our way to Morocco. We would just stand there with a sign, Morocco, and we wanted to get a donkey, but we couldn't get it. Petit cheval, they were called over there, those little animals. So we were picked up by the de Beverts, who lived in Geneva, and we stayed there, and we said, we want to raise our children. We want to have them speak 2 or 3 languages. This is where we're going to come back. And then instead of going on to Morocco, Hervé de Bevert said to my husband, Glenn, let's go on to Germany. I want to just visit some of the American installations. Glenn ended up with a job as the assistant to the colonel in charge of all of the Signal Corps. and we were in a place in Hanau, which is actually where the Grimm brothers did their work, right near Frankfurt.
So you ended up living there.
We ended up living there for a year and a half, and then I got pregnant, and Glenn wanted to go back because he wanted to get into politics and government. He had studied administrative law and so on, and he also didn't like the fact that he was asked to salvage a lot of very good things because there's a lot of inefficiency in government, as we all know. So he wanted to come back, and he wanted to be a city manager. So we came back and then started having children, and it just didn't seem to end. And we went to 5 different places with 5 children. Had 5 children, said, we're going to settle in New Jersey. No more children. And then his job got very interesting, and I worked with him.
And then during that time that you were raising your kids, were you still traveling, or were you pretty settled in New Jersey?
We did a lot of camping, awful lot of camping. Went to New Hampshire to our cottage on Lake Winnipesaukee, and then when the kids got older, I think Robert was 13, Carrie was 18 or something like that. We took a 6 weeks trip, a trailer trip around the country, and that was fabulous. And then I think right after that, Carrie was as a biologist. She was at the Windermere Biological Labs in Scotland. A couple years later, out of college, so that was 4 years later, I should say. And
so you had.
So we went, and we backpacked. The kids and I backpacked through Germany and a little bit of Italy and a little bit of France, but mostly Germany.
So did your kids? You had mentioned that one of your kids went to Scotland to work. Had you traveled?
To study. She was actually studying.
Oh, she was studying. So had she left the country with you? Had you traveled with her?
Well, at that time, she was the only one of the 5 children who didn't go with me backpacking, because she was my son Chris was 19, and Carrie was 20 or so, and she was doing just a year abroad. She was in England and also in Scotland, and then that was a marvelous trip. It was. I mean, there were very few people who were doing hosteling in Europe at that time, and we would go to places and they say, "Oh, hello, Petersons, how are you? Oh, yeah, we heard about you." And then we would go down the Rhine and we'd meet people. I remember met an awful lot of people over and over again. And I, of course, was over 25, and you weren't supposed to be at a hostel. If you're over 25, they let me go along for the ride. I know it. That's right. That was a great trip.
You've done your travels, your personal travels in Europe. You've had your kids. The kids are grown.
Right, and I decided, and I also was, for years I was vice president of Oscar Schmidt International, the makers of auto harps. So I did 38 books for them, method books and stuff, and I did workshops in music education all over the country. So I did a lot of travel in the United States. And then when I became head of music education for the handicapped, then I would do travel abroad, like to Poland, and then we set up 4 symposia all over the world. And that was wonderful because I loved these new places. And I went with Rosalie Pratt, who was my co-founder.
Oh, okay, the co-founder of the...
of music education for the handicapped. Well, so now comes 1986. And at this point, I have just gotten divorced, and I have 5 grown kids who came home regularly to tell me how to run my life, and I wanted to get away. And I had an opportunity, since I was at that time, even at that time, a frequent flyer advocate, and I had 60,000 miles with TWA that I had to use up between then and November if I wanted a free round-the-world ticket. Now, that's pretty good, 60,000. You can't do anything with 60,000 miles these days. So I said, wonderful. I put my house up for rental. One of my sons helped me, another one, they all helped me. Actually, I think they were glad to get me out of the country. I don't know. Because as I'm standing with my son Christopher, just as I'm leaving to go, my first stop was Egypt, he looked at me, he said, "Mom, this is going to be a great trip." And I said, "Do you think it's really going to change me a lot?" And he said, "All of us are hoping so."
Oh.
Hope springs eternal, something like that. I put that in my book because it absolutely did happen. It was a scream. And it was such a wonderful feeling to get on that plane.
Did you know how long you were going to be gone for?
I was gone for 8 months, but expected to be gone for over a year, and I was on my way to Brisbane to actually to go off on the Barrier Reef, which I did years later with my son Chris, and I got a call from my daughter saying, "Dad is really ill. We want you to come home." So then I went home. Something funny happened. I get to San Francisco now. I've missed Papua New Guinea yet again.
And it was your intention to go there?
My
on that
intention to
trip.
go there on my way back. But they were having a revolution there or somewhere close. And I couldn't have gone anyway simply because I had to get home. The kids said, "We think you should come home." So I get to San Francisco, and my daughter is pregnant with her first child. And I call her, and she said, "Oh, Mom, I don't have a car. I feel terrible, but would you mind, could you somehow get to my house? This is the address." I said, "Martha, I just traveled 8 months backpacking and thumbing my way around. You think I can't make it from the airport in San Francisco to your house?" So anyway, that was funny, I thought.
So you came back
so
that trip was a little truncated. So you came back after 8 months.
Yes.
But was that the travel that you wrote about in your book?
But I only went as far as the Himalayas. I had an addenda talking about my trip, the Indonesia and all these various countries, because I feel sometimes in my reading of travel books, they want to get everything in. I went here, I went there. That's not what I did. I wanted to get into the lives of the people where I was. So I made it much shorter. I told stories about what happens in that kind of travel. And I think I talked extensively, wrote about the Himalayas, because that captivated me. That was fantastic. And can you believe it? Beth, I spent, what was it? It wasn't $58. It was like $158. 3 weeks, 3 weeks climbing to Everest Base Camp.
Oh, my goodness.
And
what year was that?
1986. It had to be 86 because my granddaughter was born that year. I think I was 59.
And how many times have you been back to Nepal?
Oh, many times. I go by.
Do you know how many?
No, I actually don't. Probably a dozen. And I love it. And I've done everything I wanted to do except the Mustang. And I was going to do that this year. So I'm going to wait till I'm 90. And I know you haven't mentioned my age because you're too nice to do it, but who cares? It's a number. Huge number. Oh, God.
You're 85.
I'm not 85. I'm 89.
You're 89?
You know that. You got an invitation to my party.
No.
Well, you have to come next year. I don't care
well, in my mind, you're still 75. So
was that what I was when I met you? Something like that.
It was, yeah.
And
it was
you're
probably
still
close
25. You see.
Yes, exactly.
And if
Thank
anybody
you very
wants
much.
to see, she looks like it too. And I look 85. Well, somebody the other day
said,
no, you don't look a day over 75. I said, what? I look that old?
Yeah, exactly. I know. I would say the same thing. It is hard to believe.
Yeah.
So you continue to go back to Nepal because that tugs on your heartstrings.
Yeah, well, also we were over there right after the earthquake, and we did our little bit, whatever we could do, contributing and taking books and taking stuff to those poor kids had no schools, and they were in prefabs, that they were working their hearts out. They were just terrific. And I just love the people there, and they've gone through such hardship. And the year 2015 was the earthquake. And we went back that fall, and the Indians were boycotting them, and there was no gas, there was no cooking oil. It was simply horrendous. I could not believe that these people who had been through so much hell had now got to contend with this kind of thing.
What was that?
That was the Indian boycott.
2016?
No, I think it was 15.
15, okay.
Wait, 16? Yes, because last year was 16. And they had again a chance to maybe do something about the roads. I thought their roads were bad until I went to Mongolia. And I'm going to start my Mongolian blog with Singing in the Rain. I'm looking for a road. I'm looking for a road. Oh, what a wonderful feeling. I'm looking for a road. Because it's just terrible.
No roads there.
No roads.
Note to self. So you mentioned your age, and it was going to come up because I do want to chat about that because I've known you probably 10 years or so, and what you're
well, longer than that, I think.
Yeah, and you're 35 plus years my senior.
Yeah.
And so I've known you. I haven't known you for a long time, but ever since I've known you, you've been an inspiration to me. And you've been, we both have the travel in common, and I look up to you and I think, yes, that I want to I want to age like Meg. I want to continue to travel. So how do you keep that up? So I think there's a couple of different levels of that. So there's probably a few different ways to look at it. There's one of just kind of the inspiration and the purpose of wanting to travel, kind of keeping your emotional and your mental energy up and saying, yes, there's still so much more to see in the world. I want to keep going.
It's not just seeing, though. It's not just seeing. It is getting into a culture. That is the important thing, because I'm not a sightseer. When I go to a place, I don't like to be taken here, there. This is the museum, this is that. No, I find it myself. I nose around in the streets, and I ask people. And that's important to me, is to get to know another culture, because we in America are so parochial. Like when I'm saying I'm going to Mongolia, these are intelligent people who say, why aren't you scared? Well, I probably should have said, oh, why would you think I'm scared? But I get mad. I say, why? What do you think's going on? You think I'm going to get murdered around every corner? Those are nomads. They're the most hospitable people you'll ever find, and they're known for that. And Ulaanbaatar is a modern city, and it's got a government store that makes Bonnet Teller look old.
The inspiration that you find comes from the other cultures, you're saying?
Yes. It's not to see. I love the buildings like Machu Picchu. That was exciting. Just the trail itself and all those steps and everything, and going up there and seeing what those people had unearthed, so to speak. And there are lots of other places like that, I understand.
But not everybody has that same feeling of inquisitiveness to go interact with another culture. Where does yours come from?
Well, I think the Second World War, I told you before, was a really big influence, and that's why I went and did the work with the Quakers in those countries, and met people from other countries and realized, hey, there's a lot of different ideas and a lot of different religions and a lot of different points of view, and it's more interesting than just going along in a rut, the same old thing. I don't find just repeating the same old thing year after year satisfying. Whatever is satisfying, if somebody is satisfied, as there are monks, there are religious people who sit and look at the sun or sit and just think, that's okay if that is what floats their boat. It doesn't me. I can't sit still that long.
You need different input.
Yeah,
you need consistently different input.
Well, it's like never being one of my big things when I make speeches, when I do slideshows, is never be afraid of the unknown. The unknown, because everything is unknown. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But if we're afraid, it's generally not going to be good. Attitude has so much to do with our lives. Our attitude as we wake up in the morning. And as you get older, you wake up in the morning, and sometimes, at least with me, I say, well, okay, what is the most important thing I need to do for the rest of my life? You can waste so much time saying, well, this is really not that important, or that is really, and you end up doing nothing.
You still have the energy to have the interest, to keep your interest up.
I have tons of energy. I do.
Where does that come from?
Well, probably pure synergy every morning that I drink. I don't know. It comes from, look at part of it is hereditary. I mean, I happen to have two sisters, and neither of my sisters is physically doing terribly well at the moment.
Are they older or younger?
One's younger and one's older. So I think that I've been very lucky, but I also have kept incredibly active. And I've pushed myself up mountains when I'm thinking, oh God, I don't know if I can breathe anymore. You've got to breathe, and you've got to stretch. And you keep stretching, which doesn't mean that you spend your life saying, oh God, I wish I were the way I was at 20. Because that's silly.
Because you won't be.
Not only that, but you don't. When you get older, you can't handle as many balls. You can't juggle as many balls. That's the way to put it. And you say, okay, so I can't, so I won't try. And that's the hardest part for me of getting older, is realizing that I'm not going to be able to do as much, and so who cares? And then when I start collecting I have journals from everywhere I've been. I have a huge thing of journals, huge thing of playbills, because I love the theater. And then I read about these terrible floods in Texas, and what happened in
Puerto Rico and right.
Florida,
Yeah.
and people's houses gone. And I said, okay, so now you're going to put all your albums together, and you think it's so very important. What do you have when it's all gone? Is stuff the most important thing? I know it's very corny, but it's
the experiences.
Yeah. It's the friends, and it's the memories. And even with, I was going to show you my camera because I'm having a lot of trouble. Believe it or not, my camera messed up the first week in Mongolia, so I had no camera. I was using my iPhone, and then people who say, so you can't get a close up. Remember it, Meg. Remember it. And I can close my eyes and remember it. We have a compulsion to get everything down. God, if I had kids now, can you imagine the amount of time on the video and on the iPhone? It'd be terrible.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about that? That transitions nicely into a kind of the state of travel these days. Well, and what do you make of everybody pretty much having their heads in their iPhones?
It's funny. It's funny when you go over and stay at the Station Guest House in Bodhnath, which is a beautiful place near Kathmandu where we stay. It's run by a monastery, and the monks are sitting there with their tablets, taking pictures of the stupa, and it is. We kind of laugh at it, but my daughter and I were talking about it the other day, how we used to sit there and we'd go to the wonderful dining hall. They had a vegetarian dining hall. It was absolutely fabulous. And we would sit there and there'd be maybe 10 other people. And you get there, hi, come on over, let's talk. We would be talking constantly. We met so many people. We got in touch with them and kept in touch with so many people. You walk in now and 9 out of 10 people are sitting on their computers. And you might sit down and say, oh, excuse me, I sit next to you. And maybe you can get a little conversation. It is nowhere near as nice.
Do you think do you think we're just lost? Like there's no kind of hope for that changing in the future?
Well, I certainly hope we have not backlash, but I hope, what is it when you go back to something before? I can't think of it.
You revert.
I hope that it's like fashion. I hope that it will come back to what it was, but it never will. Some of my best adventures were trying to make a phone call home. And I remember calling one time and getting my son, and I thought it was like 10 o'clock at night. Hi, Chris. Well, are you okay? Oh, sure, it's 3 in the morning. I always wait at 3 in the morning and say, my mom's going to call me from Egypt. I better be ready for her to call me from Egypt. Oh, honey, I didn't know it was that. Well, they said... it was I shouldn't say this, but he said, well, it's been 3 weeks since you called, and he was kind of action central. Well, everybody's still alive, yes. Well, we figured you were taking so long that you either had a facelift or found a lover. We didn't know which. He was very funny, my son Chris. So he was, and I would call back every 3 weeks and have these sometimes terrible experiences with these bureaucrats who love to make you wait.
I remember making phone calls in Vietnam, and it was like in the early days, in the early 90s, it was like $6 a minute or something.
You were
crazy.
there in the 90s?
92. Mm-hmm.
Gosh,
92.
I think it was me for 96. Oh, then you really saw it way back, didn't you?
Yeah, sure did.
It's quite different now.
Yeah, it is.
Everybody's trying to be like us. Why?
I don't know.
In fact, I remember going into Vietnam, going into a little cafe in the morning, and they had their wonderful ethnic music, their music on, and I loved it. And suddenly I'm getting jazz, I'm getting rock and roll. I said, look, I came here to experience you. I can get that back home. Mm-hmm. Oh, excuse me. But I don't know what the answer is, except that my answer, now yours can't be, because you're in charge of a group. You have to be in touch. You have to know what's going on. I take my iPhone only if I need it for pictures. It's on airplane mode. I never use it. I don't take a computer, and I used to try to send blogs back, but I found it so frustrating in the little places where I stay. The connections are terrible. They're practically like dial-up. And so I don't do it. Well, my daughter Carrie is running a whole garden setup, so she has to be in touch. So she said, if you want to be in touch, fine. But I'm over here to experience Nepal.
Yeah, it's a tough thing right now. I think that people like you and I And I know there's a lot of people out there who have traveled for many years and kind of know that kind of the old school way of travel where we are disconnected and we're open to getting to know the culture. It is frustrating and it doesn't feel good to go to a country and not only see it, be pulled into the addiction of having our iPhone or our laptop or whatever it is we're using, because I feel that pull. I understand that. Oh, it's so much easier if I could just pull up Google Maps and figure out, where we are, or pull up some app or pull up
Hadn't thought of
Facebook.
that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry, I planted the seed there for you.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I mean, I know that pull because I feel that myself. Yet I do want to be disconnected. And when I go to a place like Papua New Guinea where there's very little Wi-Fi connection and very little cell phone connection, I actually enjoy that because I like to be unplugged. It's my preference.
How about the people you guide? Are they?
Oh, you mean the tour people?
Yeah, the tour
yeah. Some of them are less connected, and some of them are more connected. They'll get a data plan and they'll travel around and use the data plan, and I generally don't because I don't want to be connected to the outside world. I'll use a local data plan, like in Papua New Guinea. I'll use a local data plan. In a couple of weeks, I'm leaving for India. And I'll get a SIM card with a local data plan so that I can be in contact with local people, with hotels and that sort of thing, anybody that I need to contact with.
My daughter does that. She does that. She has a local, little inexpensive, phones are so cheap.
Right. I know. $20 and you can get a little
that's
phone.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll do that. But yeah, it is disheartening and I don't know what the way of the future is. I think it's a struggle to go against that. It's to kind of go against the wave that's happening, and I don't know how to slow it down other than completely checking out and stopping it all. And I think it's a problem. I think it's a real problem with travel.
There are no more internet cafes. Very few.
Right,
like in Dharamsala.
Well, now they're just coffee shops
and people sit there with their laptops.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I know. I've seen that disappear. So I want to go back to what I was saying before. It's like kind of as a traveler who's getting a little bit older.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Every year I get a year older.
I know. Me too. It's the weirdest thing. So as you get older, you have found your purpose and your goal kind of through this curiosity that you found early on, and you want to meet the
Well, that's because I was going to save the world. I think I told you one of the biggest things is I was in art and music and in writing, all of that. And I decided after the war that was frivolous, that what we had to do was save the world so we would never have another war. Let me see, how many have we had since then? Pretty awful, pretty discouraging.
Do you still feel like you need to save the world?
No, I've decided that that's a story that I can put to rest. I am not saving the world. All I can do is work in my own backyard and do something like the ripple effect. Help. I spend three days a week, just part of the day, sorting thousands of books at a place called Good Cheer, where they give the money to the food bank, and the food bank pays people gives food to people who need food, that sort of thing. So you can do a little here and a little there, and you can give your money to things during this very terrible time in our country. There are groups that are not being funded, like Planned Parenthood.
Right.
And you can give money to that, and you can put your money where your mouth is, which is one good thing about the upheaval, and that is that people are getting off their duffs and saying, hey, if I want to do something in my country, I got to do it. I've got to make an effort. I can't just sit and complain.
But that's your local community. But I'm talking about the inspiration to keep traveling and keep experiencing the world.
Just because I love it. We're getting crooked
just
here.
Because you love it.
Well, I love to get on a plane, even though I say, well, maybe this is the last time. I don't cross my fingers. I don't cross my fingers anymore because I realize it hasn't helped. I mean, crossing my fingers and then not crossing my fingers, I'm still here, and even just this last trip from Hartford, Connecticut, here to Seattle, and we take off, and and the clouds are so gorgeous. I have never seen anything like the cloud formations. It is spectacular. And I'm thinking that is an experience that I can treasure. I don't take pictures of it. I just think that those are things that keep you alive. But then a lot of people get that through reading books. I like to read, but I unfortunately read too much to take an exam. So I can tell you everything that's in that book, but it takes me twice as long, probably, as it takes you.
It just keeps you alive. The travel keeps you going. That's just put a period on the end of that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That
Well,
is
and
a
then
great
sharing
thing.
it too.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I noticed when I first started coming back. Americans say, well, how was it? And I'm not damning all Americans, but this is hey, how was it, Meg? It was fabulous. Oh, wonderful. Now let me tell you what I've been doing. And I'm saying, well, I've tried to show people my pictures of Mongolia many times. Oh yeah, I want to see those. Nobody. Well, my two girls did look through my iPhone because unfortunately they were on my iPhone, and we had some videos. But then I feel overwhelmed, which is a word I hate to use because my mother used it all the time. When I see all that I have to do to get it in a condition for people. Well,
Yeah,
God,
to
you
enjoy.
do it.
I do. I know.
I don't know
It
how
is
you do that.
overwhelming.
Blog it's really a huge job, and it becomes more huge, when you are what some people call me a technotard. However, that isn't very nice because actually I have friends who don't even have computers. I don't want to. Listen, I like the 20th century. I don't see any sense. I said, well, when you have to have your liver removed, maybe you'll be glad you're in the 21st century. Well, I hadn't thought of that. I mean, I think we have to keep up, and I think it's great for our brain to do computer, but let's not beat ourselves up because we're not like the 5-year-olds who were brought up.
Yeah, swiping magazines or trying to.
I just, my first computer, my grandson was 10 years old. He's now 25. And I was carrying on and tearing my hair and having a great dramatic breakdown over this bloody computer. And my grandson came up to me and said, Grandma, calm down. Tell me what the problem is. Tell me where it hurts.
Yeah, and he'll fix it.
Yeah. But so I don't beat myself up on that, but I'm constantly
improving and constantly keeping your mind going.
And I'll tell you, for the old folks, you got to write it down. Write it down.
Oh,
press this, you press that, you go to the right, it's up there. It's a little tiny thing. If you
and I've always had to do that. I have a terrible memory, so I've always got to write stuff down. Well, let's talk about the physicality of it. So you was it a knee replacement or a hip?
Oh no, I had a hip replacement.
Hip replacement.
Oh, that was not a problem. That was great.
That was great, but you were 85.
Yeah.
Tell the story about going to the doctor.
Oh, yeah, the doctor said, the doctor, I won't mention his name, but the doctor said that I don't work on people over 80. I said, well, now you got a new demographic. Think of it. Think of all the money you're going to make with all these 80-year-olds are coming to you. And he said, Mrs. Peterson, most people, when they're your age, have been dead for 5 years. Well, that remains to be seen.
Note taken.
He was very taciturn. I thought that was funny. And in 4 months, I'm up there climbing.
Wow.
4 months.
That's amazing.
Well,
but you've had challenges.
Sure.
But as you said earlier, you've just had to slow down a little bit and just realize that there are things that you can't do.
Well, I fell in Bhutan and damn near broke my... Oh, don't ever do that. I was walking with a bunch of monks in one of those big stone places, beautiful. There was a bridge leading over there. I'll never forget it. And they're all walking along. We're camaraderie personified. And all of a sudden, they just separated from me because they knew that this great big step was appearing, and I didn't know it. And I went slamming down on it. God. Well, then I thought, didn't hurt. Then I tried to go up and down stairs. So I went to the doctor in
Bhutan.
This was in Bhutan. I went to. It was a riot. I'm telling you, I had such funny experiences because the medicine in those little out of the way places is not terribly good. And they asked me where it hurt, and then they did something and they put some bandage on, and they didn't know what to do at the end of the bandage. These were and so I ripped it down the middle, or I cut it down the middle. I tied it in a knot the way your mother would do, and they said, "Oh, are you a medical person?" So I said, "No, I'm a mother."
Oh, you're teaching them.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, that is. So the physical part of it for you hasn't dissuaded you. You don't think. What about just kind of the energy level? You're not ready.
Well, I think I'm getting ready to lower the volume on that.
What does that mean to you?
That just means, I don't like it. But I know this last trip when we went up and we got up high.
This was in Nepal.
Yeah. It was Amayangri in the Kumbha, in the Kola Kumbha. it was wonderful. We had been there before, and we went back to see how the earthquake thing was going. We loved that area. And then I went up that, and usually my daughter could go up in one day and back down. We took 2 days. That's the difference. We hiked to a certain place, but it was nice. We camped, and we had no people coming through with yaks in the middle of the night and walking down this trail with no lights whatsoever. I mean, all that sort of experience. And then we were right by the fire, and I loved that. Why race up and race down? So then we went up and came back down and then went on. I'm trying to think of the name of the town because it was very destroyed in the earthquake. I wrote about it. I wrote a lot about this town because we had been there before, and it was just dreadful what happened to it.
So being slower, that's the main thing for you.
Oh, yeah, slower.
You know, you told me a story before we started recording that I want to touch upon because I just thought it was so brilliant. You gave a talk, and someone came to you after that talk.
Yeah, a middle-aged woman. It was at a library, and it was a slideshow, typical slideshow. And she said to me, "You just cost me $400,000, Meg Peterson." Wow, tell me how. She said, because you said, and she said, I'm a cancer survivor, and I don't know how long I have to live, and I've always wanted to buy a home in North Carolina on the, what is that beautiful area?
It's like the Outer Banks area?
Yes, that beautiful place. I've been looking at that. I've had my eye on it for about 10 years, and I'm going to buy it. Because you said, if you have a passion, a bliss, something that you've always wanted to do, whether it's to serve people, whether it's to buy that house, whether it's to whatever, do it. Don't wait. And I believe that now with myself.
Why do you think people make excuses and they don't do things?
Well, they're afraid they might fail, possibly. My father used to tell this story. My father was a minister, and I remember way back when I was a child, he told a story about this fellow in his congregation who had a lot of money, and he always wanted to help people. And he said, but he didn't quite have enough money, and he was always waiting. He was always waiting to have enough money so that he could maybe start a foundation or help children or help schools. But he said to my father, Charlie, I just haven't gotten enough yet. I have to have security. He died. He never had enough money. So if you want to start something, it's kind of what President Obama said. You see a problem, fix it. If you can't fix it, get somebody else to help you fix it. Hey, that's wonderful. That's what community's about, isn't it? Go to brunch at the Whitmans. How do you do your name? How do you do a double name?
Oh, no, I'm Whitman and John's Ingalls. Yeah.
So it's not Whitman Ingalls? That's very pretty.
No, we could be Wingles. We could just mash it together like that.
Ingalls Whitman. That's good too.
That's good.
Oh, well, by the time this is over, we might have come up with a name.
I know, we might. Yeah, so yes, bring people together in different ways for sure. Live in a community, and a kind of community housing as you're looking into yourself. But I think to go back to that, just in terms of people being fearful and afraid of failure.
Or change. Change is the biggest thing. It's really the only thing that we can depend on. Change is all that you can depend on. And as the Buddhists say, life is so, what is that expression? Life is impermanent. Life is impermanent. This physical life in this plane is impermanent. And
the sooner you learn that.
You better, because the older you get, the more loss you have to be able to sustain and not fall apart.
How have you managed that?
Oh, well, when I lost my son, I couldn't fall apart because I had 4 other children who also felt absolutely as bad as I did. Well, I don't know. Anybody could feel as bad as I did.
As a mom, yeah.
Yeah, it was terrible. But I remember he had this wonderful card company, Noble Works, and I said, how do you feel about it? We knew he was dying, and he said, how do you feel about the company and all? What's going to happen? He said, Mom, life is for the living. And I remember saying to him once, I couldn't bear the thought of living without you. And he reached over and he touched my hand and he said, you just may have to. Just like that. So be it. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen.
Was he a Buddhist practitioner?
No, he was a crazy, wonderful guy.
But he had wisdom.
Oh, well, when you're dying, I think you you think a lot of things. Oh, I could go on about that. That's a whole subject. But yeah, I mean, but there's terrible loss. We've had loss in this country. We're having a hard time now.
But change is our hope. Right? Because things will change.
Yes.
Right? Things will
get better, or they could get worse too.
Well,
but let's not assume that.
I don't assume that. What I assume is that we're in a constant kind of pendulum swing. And so
that's what I was trying to think of, the pendulum.
Right. So we're going back and forth. And now we've swung from, one type of government to another. And I think we'll either come back to the center or we'll swing again.
But we won't swing without somebody doing some action. It's not going to happen. Otherwise, it's going to be really bad.
No, that's true. But I think a lot of people are motivated to action.
And I think a lot of things have been unearthed, like racial prejudice.
Yes.
Like women's abuse of women, like neo-Nazis, and all of that was now is given permission to come out in the open.
Right.
And people would say, okay, we got to face it now. We can, but the racial thing is a huge thing.
Right. And honestly, especially like with the neo-Nazi stuff, I had no idea that stuff was going on. And the other things, as prolific as they are, I didn't realize. So, it's been enlightening to me, not in a good way, but it's been enlightening. So,
well, you must find when you travel, I find people appalled at us, absolutely appalled. Ever since I was where was it? Oh God, it was Myanmar. First time on that wonderful river, Inlay Lake. You remember Inlay?
Yes, of course.
You take people there. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. Well, I can tell you some wonderful. That was during Bush, and that was when people have been upset with us for a long time because we do.
Yes, but people also
we push our weight around.
But people also know when you travel. Like, people don't get upset with me. They kind of laugh, and they kind of test the waters and say, "What do you think?"
Yeah.
But they don't hold it against me.
No.
I think they realize that. I think they realize people who are traveling are more open-minded.
Well, I had some trouble. I had some sort of conflict with a wonderful guy who was my guide in Mongolia, and he said, "Well, we were there, and all of a sudden we got caught." We got stuck in the sand in the Gobi, and it was the North Gobi. It wasn't the really hot one, and we had to shovel out. And he said, we can thank the West for this. This place last spring was beautiful. We were having animals grazing, and now in a matter of 3 months, look at it. He said, our animals are dying. We have global warming. Don't tell me we don't. And it's because of what you all did. I said, I know, Bogey. I know it is. But I know it is. And we're now trying to change it. Well, it doesn't look to us as if you are. I mean, this is what you hear. And I kept saying, Bogey, I didn't do it personally. I'm trying my best. I really am.
Well, it's also not just the West. Also, I think in all fairness to us, there's India and there's China.
Oh,
and there's a
sure.
lot of. But I realize people look to us as leaders and as
because we are the biggest polluters. Believe it or not, we are still.
I don't know the statistics for it, but I would say I guess I don't know.
See, we have the most.
I don't know for sure.
Electrical devices. We have the most air conditioning and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
I just think about the pollution in China and in India.
It's terrible
as well. Yeah.
Well, they're catching up.
Yeah, they're catching up.
Something to be happy about.
I know. Yeah. What's your secret to aging healthily?
Oh, you know the answer to that. Exercise and good and not eating a lot of and food and what you eat.
What do you eat? What do you eat when you travel?
It's wonderful, and I also I lost a lot of weight in Mongolia. Oh my God, because I'm not a huge meat eater, and my gosh, you see this darling little lamb tethered by your tent in the morning, and night he's on the grill. And that was a big celebration because they don't have any way to grow vegetables out there. Remember, Mongolia, it's 1.5 million on that whole area and 1.5 million, or 3 million actually, in 1.3 million in Ulaanbaatar. And there's a very small section where you do a lot of growing of vegetables. And it was good with it, what we got. And on our particular in our particular whatever you want to call it, 3 of us, we took a lot of veggies and we had some very good food. But there's a lot of milk. Now here's another thing. milk cows and goats. They make so many products out of that. So that's the sort of thing I ate there. And I'm not a milk drinker because it isn't good for me.
So you ended up losing weight on that trip.
Well, I couldn't chew most of the meat. I mean, my gosh, they would eat. You have no idea. They ate the insides and the eyeballs and everything. God.
So
it was an interesting experience to watch them savor it. And the next morning, they get up, and I know our driver I loved our driver. He would take cold meat and cold fat and just rip the skin off and eat the skin and eat the fat. It's all what you're used to, really. There are people who eat that nutty Nutella or something. In England, they eat that. They love it. I couldn't stand it.
And you didn't eat any of the innards or in the eyeballs?
No, I didn't. Or no eyeballs. No, I ate none of that. But we had a lot of pasta. We had stuff like that. Oh, I didn't go hungry. We had rice. No, but when I travel, I think in India the food's excellent.
Yeah, food is
now, but it didn't used to be. It used to be too hot for me to the point of.
So now it's tempered a little bit. I think
it's
for
much
tourists,
better.
Yeah,
and so I like the food there, and but I eat very very little carbo. I don't eat sugar. Take my Pure Synergy, which is a wonderful powder, which I take every morning.
Pure Synergy?
It's great.
Okay.
I can give them a good... I'm
going to look that up.
It's wonderful. It really is. And I found out about it 25 years ago when I was coming home from one of my trips and stayed with a friend in La Jolla, San Diego, California. And I said, what is this? And she said, try it. And I've been hooked ever since. I just ordered 2 more bottles.
Oh,
it's
good.
Terrific.
Okay.
It's terrific. But I'm not a fad sort of person. I eat lots of fruits, loads of vegetables, because my daughter runs this whole farming thing out on Whidbey Island. And I try to stay away from sugar whatsoever.
Yeah, good.
And it isn't a problem. You get to like the stuff that's good for you.
Yeah, you do.
You get to love salads.
Yeah, you just
I don't put a lot of fattening stuff in it anymore. I think weight is a very important thing. Certainly is for diabetes and such. I'm lucky though. I'm very lucky, but I do somatics. I do exercises every morning for the back and for, I sound... You
sound like
me.
Walk out,
you look at you.
You sound like me. I mean, I'm up every morning exercising, try to eat well.
Yeah, you do eat well.
I don't get my Pure Synergy powder in, but I get other things.
Well, I don't take it when I try. Apple cider. Do that. Doctor, what's his name? Oh, my God.
It's the mother's, Bragg's.
No. It was Dr. Somebody. It did everything but get rid of unwanted pregnancies, I swear to God. You could do oil. It was apple cider vinegar. Apple cider and vinegar, and it was Dr. Somebody, and we used to laugh about it, but then somebody said, try it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be good, really good for you. So I do that in the mornings.
You want to know what I do that somebody told me about, and I have no knee trouble, and I've had a meniscus operation. These were results of falls. We fall all our life. You just have to fall the right way. Okay, I have had these 2 falls. Anyway, this friend of mine who sat next to me in Symphony came in one day. I have no more leg pain. He's from Israel. I have no more leg pain, Meg. It's wonderful. I said, he was 65 years old. He said that he uses drunken raisins. Now, I recommend this. I do it every morning. You take blonde raisins and you put them in a jar, and then you get gin, and you pour the gin over the raisins. Put the top on, shake it up a little, put it in the cupboard for 10 days, and it ferments, and it becomes a natural anti-inflammatory.
Yep.
Try it if you have knee trouble, and you can look online, and there are people who sell it, and there are other people who say this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say, but. I think it's fabulous.
Yeah. Well, I think fermentation is great. They say it is great. I drink kombucha, which is a fermented drink.
That's got a lot of sugar.
It does. But you know what? I don't know when it actually comes down to the final product because I think
Do you make it?
Yeah, I do. The symbiosis between the yeast and the sugar. I don't know that it's actually because there is a lot of sugar that goes in it.
Well, you certainly are not fat, so you don't need to worry about it.
Well, it's running. I run every day.
Do you run?
So, yeah,
well, see, I've never been a good runner. It jars my back. So was born with an extra vertebra, so I really have to watch that sort of thing.
But you haven't let it stop you from hiking.
No. Oh, heck no. No, the hiking is great.
And you just got back, and we've been trying to schedule this all summer, but you just got back from New Hampshire from
Lake
camping and back.
Yeah. Well, no, I wasn't backpacking. I did not climb this time.
Oh, okay.
One of the reasons I live out here, though, is, and I tell all the people who live out here, they have no idea what a gorgeous playground this is.
Yeah, it sure is.
The Olympics and the Cascades, and I backpacked with really was backpacking. Now we car camp because I'm not about to carry 40 pounds anymore. Ain't going to do it. That's the change. And it does happen. But maybe, after you've done it for 20 or 30 years, you might say, hey, been there, done that. Don't want to do it
Done
anymore.
with it. Is there anything else you want to cover?
You're the
before
boss.
we wrap up? No, but I want to make sure that we cover anything that.
Why don't we ask our studio audience
that you want to chat about? So let me ask you this: this is the Be Bold podcast? What does being bold mean to you?
Being bold means to decide what you want to do and do it. I mean, bold. Try something you've never done before. That's the thing. I like that. Do that every day. It's sort of like when I was writing my first big method book for autoharp. This is connected. Okay, I said I was up in Canada what a beautiful resort. Name me the most beautiful resort in Canada. Anyway, I was there making a speech, doing a workshop. I said, God, I got to finish this method book. Got to finish it by the first of the year. And at this point, it's September. And one woman, very wise older woman, said, May I give you a suggestion, Meg? How about just saying you're going to work 1 hour a day? Make it 2. Okay, 2 hours a day from 9 to 11 or from 10 to 12. Pick your time. That's it. I'm going to work 2 hours a day. Now, if I get really interested and I go 4 hours a day, that doesn't count for tomorrow. 2 hours a day each day. Never mind when you think it's going to be done. Do it till it's done. Man, that was the best advice. I do that with everything. I'm going to sort 1 box a day. If you get really happy, you can sort 2, but you still got to do that 1 box tomorrow. So you take one thing that you've been wanting to do, one simple thing. I've always been wanting to walk downtown and back. I've never done it. I've always said, it's too long. It's in Seattle. Everything's too steep, blah, blah. And do it. You can write it down. What did I do today that I didn't do yesterday? So I'm going to be bold. Be bold is a fabulous mantra.
That's good. I like that mantra.
It is.
I say tagline, but I like mantra a lot better.
You're a Twitterer.
No,
I'm
you not. I hate.
Isn't that what taglines are?
No.
It's too bad because you could be entertained from the White House every morning.
I refuse.
At 5 a.m.
I refuse to be. And then finally, tell me where people can find you.
Oh,
you have a website?
Nice. Yes, I have. It's megnoblepeterson.com. And if you're interested
spell Peterson
for us. Peterson. And Noble is Noble. B as in boy, L-E.
All one word, Meg Noble Peterson.
megnoblepeterson.com. And
you have a great blog on there. It's updated with your travels.
Well, unfortunately, it's a good thing I'm not going to Nepal this year, skipping 1 year, because I can then finish Mongolia before. It's terrible.
Well, we'll look for that.
No, I have a lot of trouble getting it up because, the problem with blogs is they're boring because people write, I got up in the morning and then I had my orange juice and by the time they get to changing the baby, you're just saying,
but you've got all those great photos on there. You've got, it's
when do you
beautiful.
get time to watch all the blogs for all the people who go on your wonderful trips and then write a blog about it?
No, but not all of them are writing beautiful blogs and posting beautiful adventurous photos like you,
But I am writing another book. But this isn't a travel book.
Oh, what is it?
It's raising children in the 60s. It's raising your age child. Maybe you weren't. Maybe you're 70s. Probably you are. I don't know. But it's called I Love You to Death, Bud. And I'll tell you why. I will tell you have to read the book in order to find out where the title comes from. However, I was reading, was this guy Richard Lewis, I think, the one who wrote Moneyball. Very good writer.
Yeah. Michael Lewis.
Michael, excuse me. And I have a friend who wrote about his the birth of one of his children, and it was a family thing. It was excruciatingly funny, kind of Irma Baumbach type of thing. And I said, hell, I can do that. I've had wild experiences with 5 children. Are you kidding me?
I bet.
So, but the 60s and 70s are so different. Everything was totally different. And you don't need to say to people, hey, it was a different time. We didn't have cell phones. You don't have to say that. They lived through it.
Yeah.
How many people your age find such a huge change? I just think it'll be fun. So we'll see.
What's your next adventure? Your next travel adventure?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe to Turkey. Well, we have to get Erdogan to stop fighting everybody. I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I have 4 countries I want to go to. But
What are they?
I have to get a trap. Portugal. I hate to admit I haven't been to these places. Portugal, Turkey, Greece, Russia I haven't been to. I had a chance, and then there was a whole other story why I didn't go there. Well, that's just to begin.
How many countries
And
have you been to?
Iran I'd love to. I don't know,
Iran.
14 or 15 the first time. A lot of countries.
But how many total, do you know?
Well, I can call you on that one.
You don't have to. I just thought if you knew
lots
offhand.
of countries.
You know what? I don't know offhand how many I've been to. It's 40-something. I don't know. You've been to many more.
40.
You've been more, much more than me.
40.
No, you've been far more traveled.
I guess if you're
going
to call Africa, you're going to name each country.
Yes, of course you do.
Okay, there you go. South Africa, I loved. But you have to read the book to see all that, because I do extensively. I wrote about South Africa when it was still in apartheid, and that was an experience. And then when I came home, by the time I got to the book, I was very slow. Nelson Mandela had been released, so I had to change a lot of stuff, because it had changed a lot. It was pretty bad when I was there. Yeah.
So thanks again, Meg, for coming and making your way down from Whidbey Island to West Seattle. And we've got a gorgeous, beautiful day here in Seattle, which is just amazing after a lot of rain.
Yes. Oh, have we had a lot of rain?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe you just got back into town. It was been terrible pouring rain for a few days. Yeah. So you might have missed that.
We see it doesn't rain in Whidbey Island, which is why I live there.
It could be that. You know, you did email me one morning and you said, it's beautiful here. And I thought, what is she looking at? Because we had just torrential rain.
Did you?
Yeah, we did. But it was so.
But you need torrential rains. It's
we
been
do.
dry. It's been the driest year.
It has been. We have to do this again. We'll have to chat again.
Absolutely.
Spend more time. And I'm coming to your 90th. That's next year, right?
Yes, that's right.
I think I'm actually in town next year
June,
for it. Yeah.
Around the 3rd of June, that'd be great.
Okay. It's a date.
All right.
Thanks, Meg.
All right. Thank you.
I've really got to get me some of that pure synergy. That will keep me active for the next 40 years. By the way, I've included a link to that pure synergy in the show notes. A reminder that if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play and leave a review. Those reviews really do help the podcast get more exposure and will ultimately help us grow our Be Bold community. I bet you know a few people in your world who would also enjoy today's episode and this podcast in general, so please do share. Podcasts are a new thing for some people, so if you've got a friend who doesn't know how to download them, take a moment to give them a lesson. You can find out more about me by visiting wanderlustandlipstick.com, and you'll find the show notes and all of the podcast episodes on beboldpodcast.com. If, like Meg, you're passionate about travel, or even if you're new to it, you can join me on a tour. I've got numerous trips coming up with spots available on Tanzania, and that includes a safari and Kilimanjaro trek, Papua New Guinea, and I've got North India and Bhutan that'll be posted on the website pretty soon. I've also got culinary tours to Santa Fe, New Orleans, and Seattle. You'll find all of those on wandertours.com. If you'd like to connect with me, you can friend me on Facebook, and I'm WanderGal on Instagram. Sign up for my newsletter on the Wanderlust and Lipstick site, and you'll receive a series of tips for making your travels safer. I've also started sending out Wanderlist, a monthly roundup of my favorite gear, music, podcast episodes, and other items that I've discovered and want to share. And you generally won't find those on my social media channels, so that newsletter is a special place for that info. If you know of any high-performing, adventurous, philanthropic women whom you think might be a good guest, shoot me a note or leave a comment. And finally, the ladies can join us on our Be Bold Facebook group. That's where you'll find our growing community. It's where we share goals, talk about our setbacks, and where you can find words of encouragement and inspiration from others. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Be Bold podcast. Until next time, be bold.